Growing up in a big Indian joint family is like living in a boardroom where every meal is a meeting and someone is always trying to prove they're louder, tougher, or smarter than you. And me? I was none of those things. My name is Nikhil Arora, and I was born into a business legacy I never asked for. My grandfather started Arora Textiles, a medium-scale fabric export company based in Surat, Gujarat. My father and his elder brother, Uncle Mahesh, took it over after college. Then came the next generation, me, and my cousin Raghav. Now Raghav, he was everything the family loved out loud. Loud, brash, full of swagger. He played cricket aggressively, cracked dirty jokes, interrupted elders mid-sentence, and somehow got praised for it. I, on the other hand, was quiet. Observant. I liked books, strategy games, sketching, and reading business case studies while others watched IPL. That didn't sit well with Raghav. He called me Chikna CEO. Mocking my glasses, my soft voice, and the fact that I never yelled back. At every family event, he found a new way to humiliate me. "You'll probably run the business on spreadsheets and yoga," he once said during dinner at our grandfather's 75th birthday. Everyone laughed. I smiled too. But inside, I was sinking. Even my dad, gentle, hard-working, would pull me aside and whisper, "Beta, you need to toughen up if you want to survive in this family." The worst part. I believed them. I thought being soft-spoken meant I was weak. That being methodical made me slow. That I didn't deserve a voice in the business just because I didn't shout over others. So I stayed quiet. I let Raghav take the lead in every conversation, every family meeting. I watched him fumble basic product costs and still be applauded because he could bluff his way through supplier deals. When I turned 20, I got accepted to IIM Ahmedabad for my undergrad business degree. Raghav scoffed, "Good. Maybe the books will finally toughen you up." But I didn't argue. I just packed my bags, left Surat behind, and promised myself one thing. I won't come back to be anyone's punchline ever again. What they didn't know was, I wasn't just going to study. I was going to prepare. Prepare for a return they'd never see coming. I came home for Diwali break in my final year at IIM Ahmedabad. My coursework was intense: finance, supply chain, leadership simulations, but nothing drained me like coming back to that suffocating house filled with tradition and judgment. The house was buzzing with activity. Rangoli outside, lights up on every floor, and sweets piled on the dining table. But the warmth in the walls wasn't always extended to me. The men gathered in the living room were talking about business over whiskey: Raghav, Uncle Mahesh, my dad, and two of the older cousins. I sat quietly in the corner, listening. They were discussing expansion into e-commerce logistics and how to digitize some of the inventory tracking. That was my wheelhouse. I'd just done a case study on a similar business pivot. So I cleared my throat and said, "Actually, if you implement a decentralized inventory model using RFID and vendor portals, you can reduce shrinkage and..." "Bhai," Raghav cut in, laughing. "We're talking real world, not textbook fantasy. You go finish your project report, huh?" Everyone laughed. Except my dad, who gave me a glance that said, "Let it go." I did let it go. Outwardly. But it hurt. This was my own house. My own family. And still, I was a background character in a drama where Raghav played the hero even though he had barely passed high school, and his version of leadership was yelling at employees in the warehouse. Later that night, I stepped out onto the terrace alone. I could still hear the laughter from inside, echoing down the hallway. I opened my phone and pulled up a note I'd been adding to for months. Operational failures, Aurora Textiles. Overdependence on traditional suppliers. No digital inventory tracking. Weak logistics for international orders. Delayed receivables. Favoritism in hiring. No succession planning. Raghav thought I was soft. He had no idea I'd already built a SWOT analysis on the family business. With his name under the threats column. He mocked me for being the silent type, but silence is deceptive. It gives you time to think, to listen, to calculate. I stayed through the festival, playing the role of the quiet one, the respectful one, the doormat. But before I left for campus again, I said one thing to my dad that stuck with him later. Papa, sometimes you don't need to raise your voice to be powerful. You just need the right timing. He thought I meant exams. But I was already thinking beyond graduation. Already planning a return that wouldn't require anyone's permission. Especially not Raghav's. I returned to Surat for good 6 months after graduation, but this time, not as the boy who left. I had a dual specialization in supply chain and strategic finance, internship experience with 2 global firms, and a final project that got published in a management journal. But I didn't arrive flaunting any of that. No big announcements. No showing off. Just a quiet return with a backpack, a soft smile, and a clear plan. Uncle Mahesh greeted me at the gate. Beta, back for good? I nodded. Come to the factory this week. See how we run things. Of course. That was exactly what I was hoping for. The factory was still operating out of the same industrial block near Urna, with faded walls, outdated systems, and barely a single digital dashboard in place. Raghav strutted through the factory floor like a film villain, ordering workers around, talking loudly on speakerphone, and waving papers without reading them. I kept my head down and said I was just shadowing operations. No one suspected anything. Not even when I started taking notes on idle inventory, broken machinery, and poor vendor compliance. Raghav patted my back. Good to see you finally learning something outside of books, Nikhil. I smiled. Yeah, lots to learn. What he didn't know was that I'd already set up a consulting profile under a different name, offering supply chain optimization services. I was talking to some of Aurora Textiles' own clients, once frustrated with late deliveries and chaotic invoicing. Within weeks, I had insider knowledge of their pain points and drafted an alternative model. Leaner. Digital. More efficient. I wasn't just taking notes. I was designing their replacement. My first real break came from a vendor in Ahmedabad who told me, "We like your ideas, but your family firm is stuck in the past." That's when it clicked. I didn't have to fight Raghav for space. I just had to build something better right next to him and let his own arrogance burn him down. So I spent the next 4 months quietly registering a private company. Straight-linked exports. Backed by angel investors I'd met at IIM, run by a skeleton team of sharp logistics grads from Bangalore and no ties to the Arora family name. Meanwhile, Raghav thought I was still his soft cousin who showed up for family lunches and politely avoided eye contact. But I was already competing with him, stealing his future clients, innovating his outdated systems and laying the foundation for something he couldn't even recognize as a threat yet. The best part? He was too busy mocking me to notice I had moved into his lane and passed him without a sound. From the outside, it looked like I was still figuring things out. I'd visit the factory once or twice a week, nod at meetings, take notes, and occasionally give harmless suggestions that Raghav would dismiss with a wave of his hand. "You're overthinking it, bro. This business runs on instinct, not Excel sheets." And I'd just nod, smile, even thank him for his guidance. But behind the scenes, StraightLink Exports was already onboarding two of Aurora Textile's biggest international clients. It began with a simple pitch. "We're a young firm using predictive inventory tools, real-time supplier dashboards, and AI-backed delivery forecasting. We guarantee faster turnarounds, cleaner invoicing, and zero dependency on legacy processes." Most buyers were tired of dealing with the sluggish bureaucracy of Aurora Textiles. They were ready for change. They just needed someone who sounded smart enough to trust and quiet enough not to threaten them. That someone was me. I hired a tech lead from Mumbai, a finance analyst from Delhi, and a supply chain manager from my old campus network. All remote. All agile. All loyal to the mission. In 4 months, we had set up a digital backend, a cloud-based procurement system, and a logistics partner who could deliver goods in half the time Raghav's company could. While he was shouting at clerks for late shipments, I was receiving emails with subject lines like, "StraightLink looks like the future. Can we talk long-term?" Still, I didn't rush. I let things move slow. Because this wasn't just about taking clients. This was about letting him dig his own grave, thinking I was still watching from the sidelines. The first real crack came during a family dinner, when Uncle Mahesh casually mentioned, "We lost the Patel contract." Strange, they didn't even negotiate this time. Raghav grunted. "They'll come back. They always do." I nearly laughed. Because not only had Patel Textiles not come back, they were already receiving their first shipment from me. I even sent it in Aurora-style packaging, just for the irony. Raghav would spend the next few months blaming staff, yelling at suppliers, and restructuring departments that had nothing to do with the real problem. He was looking everywhere except at me. And the more he dismissed me, the more reckless he became. Slashing budgets, delaying payments, skipping audits. All I had to do was stay quiet and keep building what would eventually replace him entirely. The first time Raghav looked truly rattled was at the Diwali board review. He had printed the same glossy charts he used every year, growth projections that looked impressive but were completely disconnected from reality. I sat quietly as he bluffed his way through them, but the tension in the room was different this time. Our uncle, a silent partner who rarely attended, finally asked, "Why did we lose the Shah and Malhotra account? They've been with us for over a decade." Raghav shifted in his seat, mumbled something about pricing pressure and internal delays. But I knew the truth. They had left for me. And they weren't coming back. The cracks had started to show everywhere. Production was stalling. Receivables were piling up. And Raghav, still arrogant, was blaming everyone but himself. He fired the inventory manager, demoted the accounts lead, started outsourcing dispatch to a shady third-party vendor just to cut costs. Every decision was reactionary, ego-driven, and short-sighted. Meanwhile, StraightLink Exports was quietly absorbing everything. We were no longer a secret competitor. We were becoming a storm on the horizon. And still, Raghav didn't suspect me. In fact, one day, he walked up to me and said, "Nikhil, if you want, I can give you more tasks. Think you are ready to handle supplier follow-ups?" I nodded. He grinned like a fool and said, "You are finally growing up." And I just said, "I'm learning from the best." What he didn't realize was, I was already meeting those same suppliers under my own company name, offering them better deals, faster payouts, and digital tracking. More than half of them said yes. The arrogance that once made Raghav powerful was now making him blind. He couldn't see that the empire he thought he controlled was bleeding from the inside because I was pulling the strings one thread at a time. And I didn't have to sabotage him. I didn't plant false numbers. I didn't leak anything. I simply let him keep doing things his way. Because his way was the slowest form of collapse. And when he finally realized how much ground he'd lost, there would be no one left to blame but himself. The day everything shifted, the sky over Surat was grey and heavy, like the city knew what was coming. It started with a phone call. Raghav had just lost two major international buyers, one of whom owed the company over 22 lakhs rupees. Cash flow was frozen. Salaries were delayed. Vendors were threatening legal action. And the bank? Well, they'd started pulling back their credit line. I knew all of this, of course. Not because I was still just observing, but because one of my own clients, a former Aurora Textiles customer, forwarded me a message from Raghav begging for extensions. It was time. I scheduled a meeting with Uncle Mahesh and my father, and said, calmly, I'd like to help by acquiring the company. They looked at me like I had lost my mind. Acquire, my father repeated. Yes, I said. StraightLink will absorb the operations, retain loyal staff, and clear your vendor obligations. In exchange, we take full control. Equity. Brand. Assets. Everything. Uncle Mahesh turned red. This is a family company. It was, I replied. Now it's weeks from insolvency. The room went silent. I slid a contract across the table already vetted by legal. Already approved by my investors. I wasn't asking for permission. I was offering rescue. And they knew it. Within days, the deal was signed. StraightLink Exports acquired Aurora Textiles. And Raghav? When he heard the news, he stormed into the office, demanding answers. You're joking, right? He barked. You did this. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't gloat. I simply handed him a termination letter and said, You told me business runs on instinct. Mine told me to move forward. Yours kept yelling. He stood frozen, mouth open, rage simmering behind his eyes. But there was nothing left to say. The papers were signed. The staff was already reporting to me. The suppliers were re-signed under my company. Raghav was no longer part of the business. And for the first time in his life, he couldn't talk his way out of it. It was strange how quiet the office felt without Raghav's voice echoing off the walls. No more slammed doors. No more shouting across departments. No more impulsive decisions that turned into weekly emergencies. The first change I made as CEO of the newly merged StraightLink Aurora Ventures was simple. I gathered the team, floor staff, admin, even warehouse workers and told them, from now on, this company runs on merit and clarity, not noise. And they believed me. Because they had seen the alternative. I kept most of the loyal staff, restructured the departments, and introduced proper HR, performance incentives, digital operations dashboards, everything I had once suggested and been laughed at for. And slowly, business turned around. Clients returned. Vendors extended credit. New leads came in from as far as Singapore, impressed by our clean logistics systems and fast onboarding. We became a case study, quietly, efficiently, without flashy PR. Exactly how I had built it from the beginning. As for Raghav, he tried launching a competing firm. It failed in 6 months. No one wanted to trust someone with a trail of broken contracts and ego-laced decisions. The last time I saw him was at my cousin Preeti's wedding. He avoided my eyes. At one point, I walked past him and overheard someone whisper, "That's Nikhil. The quiet one who owns everything now." I didn't turn. I didn't smile. I didn't need to. Because this wasn't about revenge for me anymore. It was about proving something to myself, more than anyone. That being soft-spoken isn't a weakness. That calm doesn't mean incapable. That silence isn't surrender. It's just strategy. They used to laugh when I sat alone at the table, sketching ideas and reading books. Now, they wait for me to speak. I never shouted. I never threw a punch. I just watched, learned, and took everything.